That's a hell of a charge coming from you, a former Labor frontbencher, a Labor man, saying that this Labor government has effectively rewarded terrorism and in doing so is encouraging more extremism.
Absolutely. And really the approach that we need to be taking right now is confronting the disintegration of the United Nations as a relevant institution. Because basically what we're seeing, and there have been detailed studies on the fact that democracy is on the back foot right now internationally. And 71% of the world's population live under autocracies. There's only 13% of it left living in what we would call democracies. And that's being reflected in the erosion of UN institutions. And unless we stand against that, we will be saying goodbye to the usefulness, the relevance, the importance of the United Nations in any of these international security or peace issues that we face. And, you know, that's being underpinned too by the really virulent information warfare that's being waged, in particular by what I call the rectangle of ratbags in Russia, Iran, China and North Korea, whose principal goal in this information warfare is the corrosion of liberal democracies. And, you know, what I would say is, well, why don't you take the approach of saying, well, we're not going to take any further steps in this. We're not going to enter into any further discussions on statehood unless the hostages are released, unless Iran and its galaxy of proxies end their war of aggression, which is the key war crime that's been committed here, and renounce violence, unless we say, hey, how about you get your Palestinian state when you meet a whole list of very important criteria that a liberal democracy would want to see in place.
Yeah, that's such an important point, Mike. Sorry, I thought you were finished there. Sorry to cut you off. Such an important point that the freeing of the hostages, the release of the hostages should be the first precondition to any other steps in this. That's the morally clear and the strategically obvious point, but so many in the world seem to ignore that. You talk about these bad actors operating through the United Nations. Of course, in the latest votes, Australia has thrown its lot in with them and dozens of other countries in the United Nations, where, as you say, the non-democratic countries get the equal vote to a democratic nation like Australia. In doing this, in these latest votes in the UN, has the Albanese Labor government abandoned Israel?
Well, this is shocking when you think of all of the history of Israel and Australia's relationship of shoulder-to-shoulder confrontation against fascism, tyranny, terrorism, and the fact that Australian lives have been saved by the sharing of intelligence by Israel. There was an incident in just recent years where we would have lost an airliner if it hadn't been for the assistance of Israeli intelligence. They have been with us shoulder to shoulder in the First and Second World War, our diggers serving alongside them. And this is the way we're rewarding them at the moment when they face this existential threat by this war of annihilation that Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran and their elements in Syria and Iraq have been waging. And that is their ultimate goal. And what are we saying at this time? Oh, we're not going to help them defend themselves against that threat. We're not going to recognise the daily inundation of rockets, ballistic missiles, drones on a massive scale, and the hostage taking of 250 citizens, the brutalisation of them, the horrendous, sadistic activities they conducted in their invasion on the 7th of October. What are we doing here in taking sides with Iran, Russia, China and North Korea? That's not in our national interests, and it's not the right thing to do.